As I stood before my father's modest tombstone under a leaden sky, grief and disbelief collided in an avalanche of emotions. In that frozen moment, the legacy he left behind, a staggering inheritance of $10 million, transformed my sorrow into a maelstrom of conflicting desires. His final words, unspoken yet omnipresent, echoed in the chill air while the weight of fortune pressed down like a curse. Amid the murmurs of mourners and the rustle of falling leaves, I sensed that this wealth, as profound as it was, would unravel family ties and ignite betrayals I never saw coming. My father's passing had come as a quiet, relentless tide, a slow, almost imperceptible erosion of certainty that left our family reeling. The day he died, I had woken to a world that seemed to pause in a suspended silence, as if nature itself mourned his absence. At the funeral, the grief was tangible, the scent of lilies and damp earth mingled with whispered condolences, each word a small stab to my already aching heart. Yet, beneath the sorrow lay an unexpected twist, the revelation that I was the sole beneficiary of his estate, a windfall of $10 million that promised to upend the carefully constructed dynamics of our family. In the weeks that followed, I found myself adrift in a sea of conflicting emotions. The inheritance, which should have symbolized security and a future built on my father's legacy, instead became a battleground of loyalty, ambition, and secret resentments. My mother, whose stoic grief had once unified our small family, now harbored a determination that bordered on obsession. She insisted that the money be used to fund a lavish new lifestyle for my younger sister, a sister who, despite our shared blood, had always lived in the shadow of my father's stern expectations. I couldn't understand how Mom could so cavalierly divert this immense fortune away from preserving our family's legacy, instead channeling it toward a future that seemed designed to please her own whims. Late one evening, as rain tapped a steady rhythm on the windowpane of our once warm home, I confronted her in our dimly lit living room. The tension was palpable, each breath weighted with unspoken accusations and piercing disappointment. "How can you justify spending this money on her?" I demanded, my voice trembling with both anger and sorrow. "This isn't just cash, it's everything Dad left behind, everything he worked for. Don't you think it deserves more respect than just a frivolous splurge?" My mother's eyes, red-rimmed from sleepless nights, flashed with a mix of defiance and despair. "You think I don't know what I'm doing?" she snapped, her tone bitter. "Your sister has always been the one Dad adored. I'm simply ensuring his memory lives on in the way he would have wanted. You're just too blinded by your own stubborn pride to see that." Her words stung, echoing a truth I wasn't sure I was ready to accept. In that heated moment, our family home, the very sanctuary that had once held laughter, warmth, and shared dreams, seemed to fracture irreparably under the strain of clashing ideals. Days melted into restless nights as I wrestled with my thoughts. I retreated into solitude, seeking refuge in the quiet corners of my father's study where his old journals lay untouched on the mahogany desk. There, in the faded ink of his scribbled memories and candid reflections, I searched for clues to the man he once was, a man whose steadfast values I now feared were being undermined by those left behind. Every page I turned revealed a tapestry of hope, sacrifice, and quiet dignity, urging me to protect his legacy at all costs. I vowed then that I would not let the inheritance be squandered on fleeting desires or serve as a tool for personal gain. It had to honor his memory, not distort it. However, as I began to plan for the future and ways to secure the fortune, an unexpected blow shattered the fragile stability of my newfound purpose. One crisp morning, while reviewing documents related to the estate at my favorite corner table in a quiet cafe, my phone buzzed with an urgent notification, a message from the bank that made my blood run cold. The institution that safeguarded our family's fortune had been hacked. Transactions I had never authorized flickered across my screen like sinister digital signatures, draining funds that should have been untouched. The reality of the breach hit me with the force of a tidal wave. Not only was our inheritance at risk, but the very foundation of trust and security my father had built was crumbling before my eyes. Panic and dread set in as I scrambled to contact the bank's security team, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. How could this happen at such a critical moment? The $10 million inheritance, a symbol of legacy and hope, now teetered on the brink of digital annihilation. In the ensuing hours, I found myself trapped in a vortex of technical jargon and cold, impersonal responses from customer service representatives. Every minute felt like an eternity as I watched the balance fluctuate and vanish into the abyss of cyber theft. The feeling of helplessness was overwhelming, as though I were witnessing not only the loss of money but the erasure of my father's final gift to me. In the midst of this chaos, my mother's earlier words echoed in my mind with painful clarity. The same determination that drove her to push for spending the money on my sister now seemed fueled by her own agenda, perhaps a misguided attempt to reclaim some semblance of control in a rapidly deteriorating situation. The confrontation with her had not been a mere quarrel about priorities, it was a microcosm of deeper fractures within our family, a chasm that threatened to swallow the legacy my father had left behind. My heart pounded as I realized that the bank's hack was not an isolated incident, it was a catalyst that would force every hidden truth and buried resentment into the harsh light of day. I spent that turbulent day in a haze, my thoughts a maelstrom of grief, anger, and an almost paralyzing fear of what the future might hold. I recalled childhood moments when Dad had taught me the importance of honor and integrity, the same values that now seemed to be crumbling in the face of modern deceit. I remembered the way his eyes had lit up when he spoke of building a secure future for us, a future that was now in jeopardy by forces beyond our control. In that desperate moment, I made a silent promise to myself. I would fight to reclaim not only the stolen money but the sanctity of my father's legacy. Over the following days, I dove into an all-consuming investigation of the breach. I met with cybersecurity experts, pored over financial statements, and even enlisted the help of a trusted private investigator. Every lead, every tiny clue, was a thread I hoped to tug until the tapestry of this betrayal unraveled completely. My nights became a blur of restless research and anxious phone calls, while the days were punctuated by the stark reality of our dwindling funds. The digital intrusion felt like a metaphor for the chaos that had already invaded my life, a symbol of the fragility of what I had once thought unassailable. As I navigated the murky waters of cybercrime, I also had to contend with the ever-present family drama that loomed like a specter over every decision. My mother's insistence on channeling the inheritance toward my sister, combined with the bank's catastrophic hack, left me questioning who truly held the reins of our family's future. I began to feel increasingly isolated, burdened with the responsibility of safeguarding a fortune that represented so much more than money. It was the culmination of my father's life's work, a beacon of his dreams and the values he had instilled in me. Yet, amidst the mounting chaos, there was an ember of resolve burning within me, a determination not to let external forces, be they familial or criminal, dictate the legacy I would carry forward. In a moment of quiet resolve, I returned to the study once more, my mind a battleground of memories and visions of what could be lost forever. I opened a fresh journal, its pages crisp and inviting, and began to write. I wrote about the love my father had shown, the sacrifices he had made, and the lessons he had taught me about honor and resilience. With each word, I felt a little more anchored to the past and a little more determined to honor his memory by fighting for the future he had envisioned. My pen moved furiously, as if in a desperate race against time, capturing the raw intensity of my emotions and the fierce, unyielding will to reclaim what was rightfully mine. As twilight descended on yet another turbulent day, I sat on the balcony of my modest apartment, staring out into a horizon that promised both uncertainty and hope. The cool evening air brushed against my skin, carrying with it the scent of rain and the distant hum of a city that, like me, was trying to move forward despite its scars. I knew that the challenges ahead were immense, an inheritance under siege by unseen forces, a family divided by ambition and grief, and a future shrouded in the darkness of betrayal. Yet, in that moment of solitary contemplation, I felt a stirring of hope, a belief that even in the midst of overwhelming loss, there lay the possibility of renewal. I resolved that I would not allow these forces to strip away my identity or erase the memory of my father's love. I would fight, not only to recover the stolen funds but to restore the honor of our family's legacy. The road ahead would be fraught with peril, both external and internal, but I had no choice but to press on. My journey had become a quest for truth, justice, and the reaffirmation of everything my father had stood for. With the echo of his lessons guiding me and the burning determination to right the wrongs that had upended my life, I stepped back inside, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. I knew that this was only the beginning, a prologue to a larger story of resilience, redemption, and the relentless pursuit of what truly matters. And as I closed the journal and prepared for another long night of research and reflection, I vowed that I would not let the shadows of loss and betrayal eclipse the brilliant light of my father's legacy. In the days after I discovered the bank hack, reality blurred into a haze of relentless investigations and sleepless nights. Every notification from the bank, every curt response from cybersecurity experts, sent tremors of dread through me. I was caught in a maelstrom where my father's legacy, once a symbol of honor and promise, was now imperiled by digital predators. I spent hours on end locked in a cramped home office, surrounded by stacks of financial statements, police reports, and emails from a team of experts I'd hastily assembled. I could almost feel my father's steady guidance urging me to fight back, to protect not only the money he left behind but also the values he had instilled in me. I began by working closely with a renowned cybersecurity consultant, Marcus, whose calm efficiency contrasted sharply with the chaos of my emotions. Over numerous late-night video calls, he explained how sophisticated the hack had been, an intrusion so meticulously planned that it threatened to strip away almost every cent of the $10 million inheritance. Marcus's technical jargon about encryption, phishing schemes, and digital footprints filled my mind with both awe and terror. Every keystroke I made as I sifted through bank alerts felt like a battle cry in a war waged on an invisible front. His reassurances, though well-meaning, could not completely allay the creeping fear that our family's financial future was hanging by a thread. Meanwhile, the family drama intensified. My mother's insistence on funneling the money toward my sister's extravagant lifestyle clashed violently with my own vision of honoring my father's memory. Every phone call with her became a battlefield of raised voices and unresolved grievances. "You have to understand," she would say, her tone brittle with frustration, "your sister was always the one Dad adored. This money is meant to secure her future, to keep his memory alive in a way that benefits us all." But to me, that argument felt like a betrayal of everything Dad had stood for, a legacy meant to secure our family's well-being, not to serve as a trophy for favoritism. I recall one particularly stormy evening when my mother and I finally had a confrontation that left us both raw and exposed. We sat in the dim light of our living room, rain lashing against the windows as if echoing the turmoil in our hearts. "I can't let you do this," I said, voice trembling with both anger and sorrow. "This money isn't just about your idea of keeping his memory alive. It's about safeguarding our future, paying off debts, investing in opportunities that would make him proud. You're throwing away everything he worked for by handing it over to her whims." Her eyes flashed with indignation and pain as she retorted, "You're so blinded by your own stubborn ideals that you refuse to see the truth. Your sister was always the golden child, the one who could carry forward Dad's vision better than you ever could." The argument left a bitter residue that neither of us could fully wash away. It was clear that the inheritance had become more than money, it was a battleground for clashing ideals and long-simmering resentments. And as if that weren't enough, the bank hack added another layer of complexity to an already fractured family dynamic. Each day, I received updates that confirmed our worst fears. Funds were disappearing, accounts were being manipulated, and a mysterious digital trail pointed to a network of cybercriminals operating with unsettling precision. The more I learned, the more I realized that the hack was not a random act of malice but part of a larger scheme, one that exploited the very vulnerabilities of modern financial systems. In the midst of this chaos, I was forced to confront my own vulnerabilities. The shock of my father's death, the crushing weight of the inheritance, the unyielding pressure from my mother, and the technical nightmare of the hacked bank account all converged into a swirling vortex of despair and determination. I began to document every step of the investigation in a new journal, a digital and paper record that detailed not only the facts but also my innermost thoughts. I wrote about the nights I spent pacing the floor, the frustration of endless phone calls with bank officials, and the gnawing fear that our family's legacy was slipping through our fingers. Each page of that journal became a testament to my resolve to fight for what was rightfully ours, to reclaim the future that my father had envisioned. One afternoon, as I sat in a small conference room with Marcus and my attorney, a sense of grim resolve settled over us. We reviewed the latest financial statements and discovered anomalies that suggested the hackers had not only siphoned funds but had also manipulated our account records to obscure the true extent of the breach. "This isn't just a simple robbery," Marcus explained, his eyes fixed on the screen. "They've engineered the attack to be as invisible as possible, exploiting system vulnerabilities that even seasoned bankers overlook." My attorney, a no-nonsense woman with decades of experience, interjected, "We're going to need to file a formal complaint with federal authorities. And, if necessary, initiate civil action to recover the lost funds." The gravity of her words underscored the battle ahead, a battle that would not only determine our financial security but also the future of our family. The investigation rapidly evolved into a full-blown legal and technical crusade. I found myself juggling endless meetings with cybersecurity experts, attorneys, and even federal agents. Each meeting left me drained yet more determined to restore what had been stolen. I started to see the inheritance not simply as a windfall, but as a sacred trust, one that represented my father's life's work and the values he had embodied. Every sleepless night, every moment of despair, fueled a fire within me, a fire that demanded justice not only for myself but for the memory of a man who had always believed in doing what was right. As I waded deeper into the investigation, I discovered that the cyber theft had been orchestrated by a sophisticated ring of hackers. Rumors began to swirl among my contacts that these individuals were part of an international syndicate, targeting wealthy estates and large financial institutions alike. I recall receiving a cryptic email from an anonymous source, warning me that my family's fortune was only the tip of the iceberg and that similar attacks were being planned on a grander scale. The email was unsigned, its language laced with both urgency and a disturbing familiarity with my father's financial strategies. Though the message did little to calm my fears, it steeled my resolve to protect the legacy entrusted to me. At the same time, the pressure within our family was mounting. My mother's insistence on spending the money on my sister intensified, as if the threat of the hacked funds somehow justified her plans. Family gatherings, which once evoked memories of shared joy, now simmered with tension. Relatives whispered behind closed doors, their expressions a mixture of pity and concern, as they watched our family unravel from the inside. My sister, for her part, seemed oblivious to the financial chaos unfolding, a fact that only deepened my frustration. I couldn't fathom how she could remain so detached, so accepting of an arrangement that, in my eyes, would squander the hard-earned legacy of our father. In a particularly heated discussion at a family dinner, I finally confronted her. "Don't you see what's happening?" I demanded, unable to contain my emotions any longer. "Our father's legacy is being stolen from us, first by hackers, and now by your mother's misguided priorities. This money isn't a toy, it's meant to secure our future, to build something lasting. How can you be so complacent?" Her response was a mix of defensiveness and resignation, as she muttered something about living in the moment and honoring Dad's wishes by embracing what he had always supported. Her words, lacking conviction, only served to widen the chasm between us. I left that dinner with a heavy heart, realizing that the battle for our family's legacy was not just external, it was being waged within the walls of our own hearts. Desperation drove me to take more drastic measures. I began to personally oversee every aspect of the financial recovery process, spending long hours coordinating with the bank's fraud department and demanding transparency. I set up secure lines of communication with our cybersecurity team and insisted on daily updates. In the quiet hours of early morning, as the city slept, I would sit in front of my computer, eyes bloodshot from staring at endless spreadsheets and transaction logs, piecing together the digital puzzle of our stolen fortune. The enormity of the task was staggering, but with each small breakthrough, a discrepancy here, a suspicious transfer there, I felt a surge of empowerment. I was no longer a passive inheritor, I was the guardian of my father's legacy, fighting tooth and nail against an enemy that lurked in the shadows of cyberspace. My nights blurred into a relentless cycle of anxiety and determination. I began to question everything, the integrity of the institutions I had once trusted, the motives of those closest to me, and even the nature of legacy itself. Was it possible that the very money meant to secure our future had become a curse, a beacon for greed and betrayal? These questions gnawed at me during the long, lonely hours, yet they also drove me forward. I clung to the memory of my father's quiet strength and unwavering ethics, using them as a compass in this storm of uncertainty. Amidst the chaos, I found moments of unexpected solace in the simplest of things. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of meetings and endless phone calls, I wandered down to a small, secluded park near my apartment. There, under the soft glow of street lamps and the gentle rustling of autumn leaves, I allowed myself a brief respite. I sat on a weathered bench, closed my eyes, and listened to the distant sounds of the city, a reminder that even in the midst of personal catastrophe, life continued unabated. In that quiet moment, I felt a spark of hope, a fleeting but undeniable belief that I could navigate through the darkness and emerge stronger on the other side. Determined not to let the crisis define me, I began to channel my inner turmoil into creative pursuits. I dusted off an old set of watercolors and a blank canvas, and for the first time in months, I allowed my emotions to flow onto paper. The act of painting, raw and cathartic, became a silent rebellion against the chaos that threatened to consume me. Each brushstroke was a declaration of defiance, a vivid reminder that even as external forces waged war on my father's legacy, I retained the power to create beauty from the wreckage. My small, impromptu studio became a sanctuary, a place where I could process the pain and transform it into something tangible, something that honored both my loss and my newfound determination. As the investigation into the bank hack advanced, I began to uncover disturbing details that hinted at betrayal from within. There were whispers of an insider, a trusted individual who might have facilitated the digital breach in exchange for a cut of the inheritance. The thought that someone so close to our family could be complicit in such a heinous act filled me with a mix of anger and profound sorrow. I questioned the loyalty of those around me, re-examining old conversations and subtle signs that I had once dismissed as mere coincidences. Every new revelation chipped away at the veneer of security I had assumed surrounded our legacy, replacing it with a raw awareness of vulnerability. This suspicion extended even to those I had once considered allies. I recalled moments when a certain family friend had expressed an unusual interest in the details of our finances, or when a distant relative's questions about the inheritance seemed to carry an undercurrent of personal ambition. Though I couldn't yet prove any collusion, the mere possibility was enough to deepen the fissures within our already fractured family. I resolved that once the immediate threat of the hack was neutralized, I would launch a full internal audit of our family's financial records, a painstaking process that would leave no stone unturned in the search for hidden betrayals. Every step of this journey was a battle fought on multiple fronts, against cybercriminals, against internal treachery, and against the relentless tide of grief and betrayal that threatened to drown me. And yet, in the midst of this storm, I discovered an inner reservoir of strength I had never known existed. The memory of my father's gentle wisdom became a beacon that guided me through the darkest nights. I recalled his quiet admonitions to stand up for what is right, to protect the integrity of one's word, and to never compromise on the values that define you. These memories sustained me when all seemed lost, fueling a resolve that grew stronger with every setback. As weeks turned into months, I began to see the first tentative signs of recovery. The bank, under pressure from federal authorities and an emboldened cybersecurity team, managed to reverse several of the unauthorized transactions. Although not all of the lost funds were recovered, a significant portion was restored, a small victory in a war that was far from over. This breakthrough gave me a renewed sense of hope, and I took it as a sign that the forces aligned against me were not invincible. I began to draft a comprehensive plan for the future, a roadmap that would not only secure the remaining inheritance but also set in motion a series of safeguards to prevent such breaches from ever happening again. Yet even as the external threats were slowly being contained, the internal conflicts within my family simmered on. My mother's unwavering determination to see the money used to benefit my sister only grew more pronounced. In private, she admitted that she had her own reasons steeped in years of unspoken hurt and a desperate need to preserve a certain ideal of family unity that she felt was slipping away. I listened with a heavy heart, aware that her vision, though deeply flawed, was born out of her own pain and longing. I knew that reconciling our differences would be a journey in itself, a journey that might never fully mend the fractures but could at least lead us toward a semblance of understanding. I reached out to a mediator, a seasoned family counselor with a reputation for bridging even the widest divides. In a series of 10 sessions, we gathered together to confront the tangled web of grievances that had long defined our relationships. Emotions ran high as we revisited painful memories and articulated long-held resentments. I spoke of my determination to honor my father's legacy, to protect the inheritance as a sacred trust, and to ensure that it was used not for petty squabbles or impulsive whims but for building a future that would reflect the values he had championed. My mother, in turn, explained her deep-seated fears of losing her daughter's affection and the security of a family tradition that had, in her eyes, been under threat. Though no immediate resolution was reached, these sessions opened a channel for dialogue, a fragile bridge over the chasm of our mutual loss. Throughout this tumultuous period, I found solace in unexpected places. Late one night, after a particularly draining mediation session, I wandered into a quiet, 24-hour bookstore. There, surrounded by the comforting weight of literature and the hushed rustle of pages, I picked up an old, leather-bound volume of poetry. As I read lines about loss, resilience, and the inexorable passage of time, I felt a profound connection to the human experience, a reminder that grief, though deeply personal, is also universal. That night, as I sat in a corner with a cup of lukewarm coffee and the soft glow of a reading lamp, I allowed myself to feel not just the pain of my circumstances, but also the beauty of life's endless capacity to heal. By the time spring began to break through the lingering chill of winter, I had carved out a semblance of order from the chaos. The investigations were ongoing, the legal battles far from over, and the family tensions still simmered beneath the surface, but I had learned to navigate this new world with a quiet, determined grace. I had transformed from a grieving heir into an active guardian of my father's legacy, resolute in my duty to protect the integrity of the inheritance. I started organizing community seminars on cybersecurity, sharing my story in the hope that others might learn to guard against the digital predators that had threatened to dismantle my family's future. Yet, the deeper I delved into the complexities of this crisis, the more I realized that the true battle was not just for money, it was for the soul of our family. Every revelation about the bank hack, every confrontation with those who would exploit our vulnerability, was a reminder that the inheritance was a symbol of something far greater than financial wealth. It was a testament to my father's vision of honor, responsibility, and resilience. And so, with each passing day, I redoubled my efforts, not only to recover the stolen funds but also to rebuild the bonds that had been frayed by betrayal and ambition. In the quiet hours before dawn, I would sometimes sit by the window, watching as the first light of day crept over the horizon. In those moments of stillness, I felt my father's presence as a gentle, unwavering force, a reminder that while the world might be filled with treachery and loss, it was also brimming with the potential for renewal and redemption. I resolved that I would honor his memory by forging a future that reflected the best parts of who he was, even if it meant confronting the darkest parts of our shared past. Thus, as I moved forward through this labyrinth of digital deceit, familial strife, and personal transformation, I began to see that every challenge was an opportunity in disguise. The bank hack, with all its brutal implications, forced me to confront not only the vulnerability of modern technology but also the fragile nature of trust in a world where loyalty could be bought and sold. And while the road ahead was uncertain and fraught with perils, I knew that my fight, both for the legacy of my father and for the integrity of our family, was a battle worth waging. The final dawn broke over a life that had been upended by loss, betrayal, and digital treachery. A dawn so vivid and raw that every ray of sunlight felt like a promise that I could reclaim what was once stolen. As I sat alone in the quiet of my study, surrounded by scattered papers and the remnants of late-night investigations, I felt the full weight of everything that had happened. My father's death, the $10 million inheritance, the bitter clash with my mother over how that fortune should be used, and the catastrophic bank hack had all conspired to shatter the foundation of my world. Yet here, in the quiet aftermath of chaos, I realized that the deepest scars sometimes yield the most transformative power. With trembling resolve, I vowed that I would not let these events define me, but instead, I would harness them to forge a future built on justice, honor, and hard-won renewal. In the months following the relentless assault on our family's fortune, the battle lines became clearer. The bank hack had revealed the vulnerability of institutions we so often take for granted, and I had plunged into a world of cybersecurity, legal briefs, and endless phone calls with experts determined to bring the culprits to justice. Every day felt like a war fought on two fronts, one against faceless hackers who had exploited the digital realm, and one within my own family, a relentless tug-of-war over the legacy left by my father. As I organized my thoughts and gathered evidence, I realized that this was not just about recovering lost funds. It was about preserving the very essence of what my father had stood for: integrity, diligence, and the quiet dignity of earning every hard-fought dollar. My investigation took me down winding corridors of financial records and obscure data trails. I spent countless nights deciphering patterns in transactions and coordinating with federal authorities. The cybersecurity consultant, Marcus, became my steady guide through this labyrinth of digital deception. Together, we uncovered a network of shell companies, obscure offshore accounts, and a sophisticated ring of cybercriminals who had set their sights on our family's legacy. Every discovery stoked the fire within me, a burning determination to see justice done. I recall one particularly grueling session, deep into the night, when I finally matched a string of encrypted transactions to a known syndicate. In that moment, despite the exhaustion and the pounding of my heart, I felt an exhilarating surge of empowerment. It was as though my father's quiet voice whispered in my ear, urging me on, do what's right. Protect what we built. Simultaneously, the internal battle with my family raged on. My mother's insistence on channeling the inheritance to fund my sister's lavish lifestyle had become more than a difference of opinion. It was a symbol of the deep-seated resentments that had long festered beneath our familial surface. The rift between us had grown into an abyss that I feared might never be bridged. I remember the heated arguments, the clashing voices over dinner tables laden with memories of happier times, and the painful silence that followed each unresolved dispute. It was not merely about money, it was about respect, about honoring my father's legacy without letting personal ambitions distort it. In every argument, I felt the ghost of my father's steady guidance urging me to be firm, to hold fast to the principles he had instilled in me, even as those very principles pitted me against the people I once loved most. Determined to mend the fractured bonds, I sought help from a family mediator, a seasoned counselor who specialized in healing wounds inflicted by loss and betrayal. In our first session, the room felt charged with the weight of years of unspoken pain. I sat across from my mother and, unexpectedly, my sister, each of us clinging to our version of truth. The mediator's gentle voice coaxed us into sharing our feelings, and slowly, barriers began to crumble. My sister admitted that she had long felt overshadowed by the legacy of our father, and that her mother's plans had been a misguided attempt to salvage her own sense of importance. My mother, tears glistening in her tired eyes, confessed that her desire to honor my father's memory by celebrating his favorite child was rooted in her own insecurities and grief. It was an emotional revelation, a raw, painful unveiling of the human frailties that had driven our family apart. As the mediation sessions unfolded over several weeks, I began to see that reconciliation would not be instantaneous or simple. The wounds were deep, and trust, once shattered, takes a long time to mend. But with each session, I sensed that we were learning to listen, to truly hear each other's pain without judgment. In one powerful moment, after hours of candid conversation, my mother reached out and took my hand, her voice barely above a whisper, saying, "I'm sorry for everything. I want us to heal. I want to honor your father's legacy together, not tear it apart." In that fragile moment, I felt a stirring of hope, a glimmer that perhaps the future could hold something other than endless strife. Back in the realm of digital warfare, the combined efforts of Marcus, my legal team, and federal authorities gradually began to turn the tide. The hackers, who had once seemed invincible in their high-tech domain, were finally being corralled by a web of evidence so intricate that no court could ignore it. A major breakthrough came when the bank recovered a substantial portion of the siphoned funds through a coordinated sting operation involving international law enforcement agencies. Though it was not the full amount, the recovery was a significant victory, a tangible affirmation that even in the darkest moments, justice could prevail. I remember the day I received the official notification with a mix of disbelief and relief. It was a quiet victory, marked by a subdued phone call and the steady hum of my computer, but it was enough to restore a measure of hope. My father's legacy, the very future he had envisioned, was still within reach. The recovered funds became a turning point for my personal transformation as well. No longer was I simply a grieving son burdened by the weight of an enormous inheritance and familial discord. I had become a guardian of my father's dreams. I began to formulate plans to invest the money in a way that would not only secure our financial future but also honor the values he had lived by. I envisioned establishing a scholarship fund in his name, supporting educational opportunities for underprivileged students, and setting up a foundation that championed ethical business practices and community development. Each proposal I drafted was imbued with the spirit of my father, a man who believed in hard work, honesty, and the power of giving back. This vision, though ambitious, became a beacon that guided me through the murkiness of the past and lit a path toward a future defined by purpose rather than pain. In the midst of rebuilding, I also discovered solace in creative expression. Inspired by the tumultuous journey I had endured, I returned to writing and painting, exploring themes of loss, resilience, and rebirth. My art became a personal diary, a medium through which I could process the tumult of emotions that had so long threatened to overwhelm me. Late into the night, I would sit by a window with a notebook and a set of watercolors, capturing the interplay of light and shadow on paper. I painted stormy seas giving way to a radiant sunrise, a metaphor for my struggle against the dark forces that had tried to claim my father's legacy. With every brushstroke, I felt a sense of catharsis, a tangible manifestation of the inner transformation that was slowly but inexorably taking shape. The creative process, coupled with the slow but steady reconciliation with my family, began to heal the fissures within me. I learned to accept that my grief and anger were part of my identity, but they did not have to define my future. There were days when I would smile at a memory of my father, recalling his gentle humor or the way he'd patiently explained the value of integrity over wealth. These moments, once hidden beneath layers of pain, emerged like fragile blossoms in a winter landscape, delicate, yet full of promise. One crisp spring afternoon, after a particularly uplifting mediation session with my family, I organized a small gathering at our once crowded family home, a symbolic act of reunion and renewal. Relatives and close family friends came together to share stories, laugh, and reminisce about my father's life. The atmosphere was bittersweet, imbued with the joy of shared memories and the solemnity of irretrievable loss. In that moment, as I stood before a gathering of people who had once been torn apart by discord, I felt the stirring of something profound, a sense of collective healing, a reaffirmation that even the most broken bonds could, with time and compassion, be mended. That day, I also unveiled a proposal for the new family foundation, a vision for the future that would encapsulate my father's enduring legacy and channel our collective energy toward making a positive impact in the world. I spoke passionately about the importance of ethical stewardship, about honoring the past while embracing the possibilities of the future. In the eyes of those gathered, I saw a flicker of understanding, a shared commitment to move forward together, despite the scars of yesterday. It was a moment of triumph, not because every wound was healed, but because we had dared to dream of a future where love, respect, and responsibility could once again define our family. As the seasons continued to turn, the turbulent chapters of my life gradually settled into a quieter rhythm. The legal battles and the hunt for cybercriminals became less of an all-consuming frenzy and more of a measured campaign, a reminder that even in the face of modern adversity, perseverance and integrity could prevail. I dedicated myself to studying cybersecurity further, driven by the desire to prevent others from experiencing the same violation of trust. I began speaking at local community events, sharing my story in the hope that it might serve as a cautionary tale and inspire vigilance among those who entrusted their futures to financial institutions. In the quiet solitude of my study, where the echoes of my father's advice still resonated, I continued to write. My journal filled with reflections on forgiveness, the nature of legacy, and the arduous journey from despair to hope. I acknowledged that while my mother's vision for the inheritance had once threatened to overshadow my own aspirations, it, too, was born from a deep, unyielding love, a love that had been distorted by grief and misunderstanding. In time, I came to see that reconciling our divergent paths did not mean erasing our differences, but rather, integrating them into a more complete picture of who we were as a family. Now, as I sit here and survey the horizon of my new life, a life rebuilt from the ruins of betrayal, loss, and relentless adversity, I am filled with a sense of humble gratitude. I have learned that the most profound triumphs are born not from the absence of hardship, but from the courage to confront it, to learn from it, and to emerge with a deeper understanding of what truly matters. My father's legacy, once threatened by the combined forces of modern fraud and familial discord, now stands as a testament to resilience. The money may have been a catalyst for chaos, but it has also become a tool for transformation, one that I intend to use to honor his memory and create a future defined by compassion, integrity, and hope. In the final analysis, this journey has taught me that life's most challenging moments are not the end of the story, they are the prologue to a new chapter, one that we write with every courageous step we take in the face of adversity. I have faced the darkness of cyber theft, the betrayal of loved ones, and the relentless burden of loss. And yet, through it all, I have emerged with a heart that knows the true meaning of resilience and a spirit that will never be broken. As I close this chapter and step forward into the bright uncertainty of tomorrow, I carry with me the memory of my father's steady guidance, the lessons of every hardship, and the quiet certainty that even shattered legacies can be rebuilt. I pledge to transform the remnants of a painful inheritance into a foundation for future hope, a living, breathing tribute to the man who taught me that honor, integrity, and love are the true measures of wealth. And though the journey ahead may still be fraught with challenges, I now understand that I am the master of my own destiny, capable of turning even the darkest of betrayals into a beacon of light for generations to come.